Welcome to another edition of Live with Laura. I'm your host, Laura Hediger, and we are kicking off the second half of 2026 together as we do begin the month of July. Did you know July is National Ice Cream Month? With that in mind, I knew we had to have our next guest here because when you think of ice cream in St. Louis, you think about one thing, Clementines. It is the go-to spot for all sweet treats. But I know for a fact that the road to get to where Clementine's is today was not always soft serve. It was rocky road. So to find out the story behind it is the founder and the CEO herself, Tamara Keefe. It is so good to see you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
And thank you for bringing the perfect
good
setup. Yes. For those of you who are not watching, you're listening, she brought 6 different ice cream flavors. What is your favorite?
Oh, of this collection, I think the Dubai chocolate, it's been such a big hit the past few years, but it's this really beautiful dark chocolate ice cream with crunchy pieces and pistachio cream woven through it as a beautiful swirl. I don't know. That's pretty good. The mango lassi is amazing.
Ooh.
I was introduced to that on a trip to India when I was much younger. So a lot of them, that's kind of hard to, it's like asking what's your favorite kid.
Yes.
Right?
Which
Really
you're never
hard to-
supposed to do.
Never.
I like that you even called it a collection because that speaks to how big Clementine's has become, that you are able to do different collections.
I'm very, very fortunate. It's part of who we are. It's part of our culture, right? We do interesting collections and bring interesting flavors to the Midwest that they may or may not have access to. Or, everything tends to happen on the coast and we get it a few years later. And so I have always said, no, we're going to bring the cool, hip, and happening things to the Midwest.
And maybe it's because you've spent the majority of your growing up years on the coast.
I did.
You're not St. Louis native, but we are forever going to claim you from here on out.
I claim that now. I am a native. I've been here so long.
Will you please describe your story of where life took you to get you to thinking about starting Clementine's?
I never really set out to start Clementine's. It was something where after 20 years in corporate America, I was running a $70 million business. I was on the road. I think in 2012, I traveled 262 days that year. And I just got to a point in my life that I said, I want to do something different. I was with a couple of girlfriends at Lake of the Ozarks, sitting on the dock, having coffee one morning at a girls' weekend. And I kind of just had one of those open the kimono conversations with them of like, I'm really not happy and I want to do something different. And I'm sitting there and I kind of start to cry. And they're like, what are you talking about? You have this amazing life. We've got these husbands and these kids we can't escape from. And you're traveling all around the world. From the outside, it looked like I had a pretty glamorous life. But I was really, really unhappy. And as I sat there one morning, my girlfriend turns to me and she says, quit. And I was like, what do you mean quit? You don't quit corporate America. And I said, well, what would I do? And my other girlfriend turns to me and she kind of starts chuckling. And I'm like, why are you laughing at me? And she goes, you're always complaining St. Louis doesn't have great ice cream. You're always, making a fit that our neighborhood doesn't have an ice cream parlor. And no one makes better ice cream than you. You love making ice cream. And oh, by the way, you work in the food industry and you have all this access to things like, why don't you open an ice cream parlor? And literally, I just sat there and I was like, I wonder what that would look like. And that weekend, we wrote my business plan, put together my financials and my deck, and 2 weeks later, I resigned. And
it was that fast.
It was that fast. It was that notion of like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I could fail. I could lose everything, and then I would have to move into their basement or my parents' basement or whatever. And I think I was to the point where as long as I was okay with I could always go get another job. Maybe not at the level that I was, but I could go get another job. And as long as I was okay with that, why not? And so I did. And so that was really the impetus for me to start Clementine's. was, I've been making ice cream my whole life since I was a kid. It was always my hobby and always my passion. And it brought people together, and it changed my life. I say twice, once when I was a kid and then once as an adult.
How did it change your life as a child?
Well, so how I got to ice cream, that's interesting. So I think I was about 7 or 8, and after church on Sundays, I heard lots of kids talking about going for ice cream. And I remember running over to my mom and pulling on her dress and saying, "Do we get to go for ice cream?" And the answer was no. And well, let me back up a little bit. So I come from a really large Irish Italian family. I have 4 older brothers, my parents, my grandparents. That's a small army. So we were and we come from really humble beginnings. Mm-hmm. And so very few people are going to invite that many people over to their house for dinner on a Friday or a Saturday or what have you. So we were kind of like this family who was super loved in our church. My dad was always fixing the roof or helping somebody. And my mom was always cooking for the pregnant ladies and the old ladies. And so our family was very well loved, but we didn't have a lot of interaction with other people. So we were kind of over there and the family that, 2 days before Thanksgiving, we'd come home and there'd be groceries on our stoop because we didn't really have a lot. Mm-hmm. And so when I would ask to go for ice cream that summer, the answer was always no. And so as a kid, you don't know that you're not supposed to make your parents feel bad for being poor. You just know that other kids get to do something you don't get to do, mm-hmm. right? And so that happened for a couple of months that summer. And then one day after church, we were driving by a garage sale because that's where we got our clothes and our shoes and whatever. And we stopped, and my mom found an old hand crank for $2, and she bought it. And we went home. I was so excited. And she said, "Okay, change your clothes, do your chores. We're going to meet back here in the kitchen, and we're going to make ice cream." So we started making ice cream as a family after church on Sundays. And that was magical for me as a kid. But what happened was other families at our church started hearing that we were making homemade ice cream. So they started asking if they could come to our house, which had never happened before. Now, we couldn't afford to make ice cream for all these people. So what happened was one family would bring the milk, another family would bring the cream, somebody else would bring the strawberries. And so our whole sense of community changed for me as a kid because of an ice cream cone. Mm-hmm. So we went from that family to the most popular family, and I had all these friends, and we started getting involved. It changed the whole dynamic. So as a kid, ice cream changed my whole life. And that always stuck with me as super powerful. Mm-hmm. So when I say that ice cream changed my life twice, once when I was a kid and the second time as an adult when I started Clementine's.
It really is such a full circle moment. And it also at an early age showed you, I'm guessing, how to be creative in the flavors because you didn't always want to just do vanilla each time. Mm-hmm. Do you remember some of those early creations?
I do. And in fact, I say my mom was the first really cool ice cream chef because she would literally go into our refrigerator and whatever we had in there, she would use. Mm-hmm. So, I remember as a kid eating a tomato and feta cheese ice cream because we had tomatoes that were going bad. So she's like, "Let's try this." And we got feta cheese, let's put this in there. And that's so weird. And Mom, you're so crazy. And then we tried and we're like, "Oh, wow, that's really good." So, it was really just, whatever was seasonal, what it was local. Mm-hmm. We'd go to farmer stands, for their day old fruit. And because in ice cream, it doesn't have to look perfect. And it was also less expensive mm-hmm. as well. So yeah, it was pretty fun.
A fantastic origin story. This is in Colorado.
This is in California.
In California.
Born in Denver, but raised in Southern California.
So what happens next with going to school, pursuing a huge corporate career, and how does that all bring you to where we are in St. Louis?
Yeah, I think I'd always made ice cream. It was always my hobby. It was always my some people play chess, some people golf, some people scrapbook. My thing, my mom did it until, unfortunately, she passed away when I was 21.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And so then as the only girl and the youngest, it kind of, the tradition became mine. Mm-hmm. And so I took that and embraced that. And so I was the one who continued that tradition moving forward. And so it just stayed with me, and somehow I ended up in my career in the food industry. You know, I've always done marketing and brand and strategy, but like I ended up in the food industry. I worked on the ingredient side of the business first, and then I went to work for the big consumer packaged goods side of the business. And so I'd been in so many food manufacturing facilities. I understood ingredients, how things were made, how to make things safe. You know, I just had this very helpful